Hello everyone. So we will again continue our child to parent communication. In the previous session, we have gone through child to parent communication where we created a parent component and a child component and passed data from child component to parent component by calling the parent using the event. We created a custom event and then with the help of that, we did that. Okay. Now there is this was our parent component, and inside that we have child component where we created a name input field, and whatever name we enter here, we are passing to parent component. Okay, so we will continue working on this component only, but we will do it via different manner. Okay, that is what we are going to check today. So let us go back to our Lightning Studio and open the same component. This is the child component JS, child component HTML, parent component HTML, and parent component JS. We will open all four. Okay. Now what I'm going to do in the child component, we will create another field. Okay. Or we can say, yeah, so let's create another field in child component, call it company name. Okay. And then we will pass the company name to the parent. Okay. So I'm going to create an input field. Lightning input. Okay. And here, let's call it, gender. Okay, let's call it gender. Change and need to call it that. Just give me a minute.
Hey, hi Mohit. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Uh, Mohit, actually here name is required to give. Like
No,
if
no,
we can skip the name.
no, you can skip the name. Name is not required to me. I just need label and then the change handler. Okay. Name just come by default. And if in case we need to, we will use it. Okay. Here I will write a handler. Let's call it gender change handler. Okay. This is in the child component. Okay. Let's create some data for the gender change handler. First, we will create a property in the child component, right? Let's call it gender in child, and whatever, if you want to define a value to it, you can do that. Okay. Now, in the gender change handler, what I will do, first I will assign the value. So it will take an event as an input. And then this dot gender in child will be equals to same way we did that earlier, event dot target dot value. And then we create a custom event, const gender event. You can name it whatever you want to name it, is equals to new custom event. Okay. And inside that, we will have to first give it a name. Let's give it a name, gender change. And then we will have to give property to it, which is detail, which will be this dot gender in child This is a property, and we will have to additionally tell bubbles equals to true. Okay. These are the changes we needed to do. And after that, we just need to dispatch it. Okay. This dot dispatch event. And here you will write down whatever the name you have provided to your event, gender event. Okay. All right. Let us try to save it. Okay, I will first write down the code, will display the demo, and then I will explain. Okay, don't worry. I think that's all we needed to on the child component. Let us now go to the parent component, okay, and see what are the changes we need to do on the parent component. Okay, so in the parent component, first we will create a property. Okay, we will call it gender in parent. I'm using such name just to avoid confusion. Otherwise, you will get confused what is coming from child versus what is already there in the parent. Earlier, what we did was we created an handler here on the change. Okay. But instead of that, this time we will not be doing anything on the HTML side. Instead, what we will do in the constructor of the parent components JS file, we will have a constructor lifecycle hook. Here, we will have to get the event which we fired from our child parent. So inside the constructor, we have to write the super first, and then we will have to listen to it. So whatever event we fired from our child component, we will have to add an event listener here in the JavaScript. Okay. So how do we do that? This dot template dot add event listener, and then we will have to write down the name which we defined in the child component. This name, we will copy it, we will paste it here, and then you will have to write this dot whatever gender change handler dot bind this. Okay, so what we are essentially doing is in the constructor of my parent component, we are saying that add an event listener whenever this event occurs. Whenever this event happens in the child component, add an event listener here. And then what we are doing, we are creating another method or another handler, gender change handler, and we are binding this handler on this event. So whenever this event happens, this handler will be called, and then we'll have to write the code for this handler as well. So we will write code for this handler. Okay. Here you can change the here you can define the name, like assign the value to it. Okay. So you can have gender in parent is equals to event dot detail. Now on the parent side's HTML, we will have to display the display that display the value of the gender as well. So let us just add one tag. Okay. Similar to this, let's add another p tag, and you can say gender in parent component is equals to, and then value of the property gender in parent. Okay. Let us try to save this. Now, first let us see if it is working fine or not, and then I will explain this in detail, both the method, both the ways. Okay. So let us go to Salesforce, refresh this. Okay, I think you got that. Now, let us pass the name. Name we are able to pass. Let us pass the gender. Gender is also we are able to pass. Although we are doing it passing name differently and gender differently. Now let us go back to the Lightning Web component and see what happened there. Okay. Before that, let us also understand what is event propagation in LWC. Hmm. Okay. See, event propagation means whenever an event happens on your web page or you create a custom event, how it propagates. Okay. Whether it goes from bottom to top or it goes from top to bottom. Okay. So there are two phases. One is the bubble phase, one is the capture phase. Okay. The component that fires an event is known as the source component. The framework allow you to handle the event in different phases. These phases gives you flexibility for how the best process the event in your application. There are two phases. One is the bubble phase, one is the capture phase. Okay. What is the capture phase? The event is captured and trickles down from application root to the source component. The event can be handled by a component in containment hierarchy that receives the captured event. Event handlers are invoked in order from application root down to the source component that fire the event. So what it is saying is that event flows from top to bottom in the capture phase. Whereas in the bubble phase, okay, the component that fire the event can handle it. The event then bubbles up the source component to the application root. So it flows from child to parent or it flows from bottom to up. Okay. That is why when we created our custom event, we have passed this bubbles equals to true. So what we are essentially telling is anyone who is up in the hierarchy of this component of this child component can add an event listener for this custom event. Okay, if they will add this event listener for this event, they will be able to listen it because we have bubbled it to the bottom to top. Okay, so if there was, let's say there was a grandparent that also can handle this event by adding an event listener on their constructor. So it goes from bottom to top. Okay, and if bubbles is equals to true, then component in the top hierarchy or component which is up in the hierarchy of this child component can be or will be able to listen to this particular custom event by adding an event listener or by adding an attribute on their HTML code if they have added the child component on it. Okay, so that is how bubble and this is how bubbles equals to true helps us by passing the custom event to the parent component. The first example on which we use the name, what we did was we created a custom event name change, and on the parent component HTML, we created the HTML markup on and then event name, and then we created a handler for it. This was one way of doing it. But for the gender, what we are doing for the gender, we have passed the component gender change, but we are not doing anything in the HTML. Instead, we are using this constructor and adding an event listener. This was only possible because we added bubbles equals to true. Okay. There is another property along with it. Let me just write down create custom event. Custom. But this is for the Aura components. Yeah. So along with this, it also has one property called composed equals to true or false. And you can practice it from here. What it says is, I'll tell you on a high level. Okay. Event dot compose, a Boolean value indicating whether the event can pass through the shadow boundary or not. By default, if you do not provide anything, it is false. Okay. So if you also want that shadow boundary to be crossed, that you can define true or false. Most of the time you do not want to do that or do not get scenarios where you'll have to also pass some CSS. So we do not do that, but you should know that because they can ask this in an interview question. Along with the bubble, you can also pass compose, what is compose and all those things. So let me put the link on the chat. Go through this, practice this. It has all the scenario. What will happen if bubble is false and compose is false? What will happen if bubble is true, composed is false? And you can practically do that thing. So I prefer you to do this thing practically rather than just know theory. Otherwise, you will obviously forget. Okay. Along with that, there are a couple of good blogs you can go through if you feel that, okay, this is still confusing and you are not 100% sure about it. Try to practice it on your own. This has all the practical examples. I want you to do this as well, especially to the new people. See, there are few people who are working on LWC in their project. I'm not worried about them. I'm 100% sure that they'll be able to handle this scenario of LWC. But then there are people who have not worked on LWC in their project or have not learned it yet. For them, it is very important that you practically do it. Otherwise, your answers will not have that confidence. Okay. So try to do this on your own. Okay. So this was part one of what we were supposed to cover today. Let me